Dallas Stars are one of the hottest teams in the NHL right now, and Dane Lewis of Locked On Stars is here to tell us why they've been so successful lately.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Gil Martin here with you on the Locked On NHL podcast, Monday edition. Always a pleasure to be here. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. The Dallas Stars, red hot right now. I know one person who's enjoying this a whole lot is Dane Lewis, our host of Locked On Stars. And Dane, thanks so much for stopping by today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here and glad to be talking about the Dallas Stars in a positive manner, like you said, with them being red hot.
So the winning streak is now at
6
games. And what has been the difference over these last 6 games that this team is suddenly finding itself?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the credit has to go to the Stars' top line, the 3 guys on that line, Joe Pavelski, Rupe Hintz, and Jason Robertson. Anyone who's been listening to Locked On Stars, especially the past week or so, have probably heard, me talk about these guys a lot. But man, I just think that these 3 guys kind of got off to slow starts to the year. Jason Robertson missed the first 4 or 5 games due to an injury. Rupe Hintz didn't score his first goal till November 10th in a loss to the Predators. And I just think they started out really cold, but I think that this is a team, that is relying on these 3 guys, the 3 best offensive players on the team, I think, without question, to get going. And the team comes and goes as they do. And now they seem to be hitting their stride with Rupe Hintz absolutely on fire. He now leads the team in goals. I believe he has 10 and recorded a hat trick against the Hurricanes, one of the best teams in the league. Jason Robertson's been, getting, his fair share of goals as well, but also finding a lot of assists. And Joe Pavelski, anyone who's been watching the National Hockey League for any amount of time over the past several years knows how good of a player he is. And he, is continuing to play really, really well despite being 37 years old. And, there's a lot of reports going around and videos that have gone on Twitter, that part of that is just his commitment to his craft. There's some videos that were circulating last week of him being the first guy on the ice every morning at practice in front of the goal, working on his redirects and just working on his game, which, you don't always see a whole lot from a guy who's been in his respective sport as long as he has. So those 3 guys definitely deserve a lot of the credit for the Stars' success because the offense has seemed to hit its stride at this point in the season.
And yet the goaltending has been outstanding lately as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a weird year for goaltending. We went into the year thinking that we were going to be okay with Braden Holtby and Anton Khudobin. Holtby started out really hot and looked a lot like he did back when he was with Washington. Khudobin, not so much, seems to start a little slow. But now Jake Oettenger has come up from the AHL after, we had Braden Holtby feeling sick with a non-COVID illness. And now he's, I believe, 5-0 in his starts in the NHL. And Braden Holtby played one of the best games of the season for any Stars goalie back on Tuesday against the Hurricanes. If for anyone listening, if you haven't seen the highlights from those, go find his highlights at the end of the third period from that game. It is one of the best save sequences. I think he saved 3 or 4 shots in a row, and half of them he was like on his stomach grabbing the puck with his glove. So Oettinger and Holtby certainly deserve some credit as well. The whole team is playing well, but obviously with any team that's hot, there's going to be guys that are helping lead the charge.
And 5-0, a 1.41 goals against average and a .951 save percentage. Yeah, only 5 starts, but those are very impressive numbers.
Yeah, especially just for how young he is. I think he's only 22, and Oettinger saw a little bit of time last season with the team just with COVID and injuries. He just had to be called up. And so he was the backup to Khudobin last season and played really well then and, struggled a little bit at the AHL this season level, at that level this season. But ever since he's been called up, you can just see it in his eyes, the way that he talks about playing with this team. I think there was just kind of like a rejuvenation as whenever he got called up. And obviously last season didn't get to play in front of, sold out arenas. And now he's playing. The Stars have played several home games over the month of November, and he's made several comments about, feeding off the energy from the crowd. And so I think, just being a young guy and getting to experience, all that this league has to offer for the first time has kind of, boosted his game a little bit. And I hope it stays that way the rest of the season.
Rumors going around that the Stars may be shopping Khudobin. What have you heard, and what do you think they can get for him?
Yeah, I've heard some rumors, mostly just today. I hadn't seen too much as far as destinations. The biggest destination right now seems to be Buffalo, which I think is interesting. And also, the general consensus among Stars fans is that they don't want him to go there. Not necessarily because we want Hudobin to stay. Obviously, with three guys currently playing goalie and Ben Bishop still kind of waiting off to the side, who knows when he's going to come back. I don't think there's an issue with letting him go. I personally don't want to see him go to a team like Buffalo because I want to see Hudobin go to a contender and be able to help out just because he's in the twilight of his career. But if he does go there, man, I'm so bad with keeping up with other teams' rosters and who they have and who they'd be willing to trade in contracts. But I don't really know who the Stars would get back from Buffalo. I would hope maybe some defensive depth. We have some really good top defensemen, Miro Heiskanen, Ryan Suter, John Klingberg, but our bottom defensemen sometimes leave a little bit to be desired. So maybe if we could get, even if it was a prospect, a guy that we have to develop for a little bit, I can see the Stars maybe making to make a move like that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. You mentioned the defense, the top defense being very strong, and talk to me a little bit about Ryan Suter, because I know the Islanders, who I cover, were talking to him at one point. He ends up going to Dallas. What has he added to the mix at this point? He's obviously no longer in his prime, but his numbers look pretty good, and I'm sure he's contributing something to the team's success.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I think he kind of got off to a slow start this season, but I think, part of that is just being in a new city, being with a new group of guys and having to, get settled in, kind of find your role within the team. Obviously, he played with, Minnesota for such a long time and even Nashville a little bit. And so I think he just needed to find his footing a little bit. And like you said, his numbers aren't bad considering his age. And certainly not a guy that's going to fill up the stat sheet like he could back in the day. But I think one thing he provides to this team is just really excellent veteran insight and leadership, especially for a guy like Miro Heiskanen, who just signed an 8-year deal with the Stars. But in his early 20s, a really young guy, who has a lot of, his hockey career left in front of him. But to have a guy who's been, in the league as long as Suter, who's been as successful as Suter at doing what he does, I think if this Dallas Stars team is able to make the postseason, that having a guy like him on the roster is going to be so valuable because he's been in the playoffs. He knows this league in and out. He's just going to be another guy along with the other veterans on this team that's going to be able to help lead the charge. Because I think veteran experience is something that often is overlooked in general on a team, but especially when you kind of get into the grit and grind of the postseason.
Dane, you've talked about the top line. You've talked about the top three defensemen. We've talked about the goalies. Give me a name that national, fans who are of the league, but who may not follow the Stars every day, someone who's contributing to the team's success, but maybe flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the answer, I've been asked that a few times and it shifted a little bit. I used to say Denis Gurianov, and I still could go with him. But recently, I think some guys, I'll give you two names because I think they both provide kind of the same idea. And maybe they're guys that other NHL fans have heard of, but these aren't guys that have always been, center of attention for their teams. But over the offseason, Dallas made moves to sign Luke Glendening from the Detroit Red Wings and Michael Raffle of the Philadelphia Flyers. Two other veteran guys, along with Suter, haven't been in the league quite as long as Suter, but two guys that have been in this league for a while that know a thing or two about the NHL. And again, anyone that's listened to Locked On Stars knows how I feel about these two guys because they're two guys that have come in, know that they're not necessarily going to be the center of attention on this team, know that they're not always going to get the recognition or the fame or the accolades maybe, but these are two guys that know their role and are very, very good at what they're asked to do. And that's kill the penalty, win in the face-off circle, and just make smart hockey IQ type plays. Glendening, an excellent guy in the face-off circle and the penalty kill. And just a smart guy in general on the ice. And again, another really smart veteran. Raffle has made several really, really nice plays, whether it's passing or just stick checks on defense, poking the puck away, things that often go, overlooked by maybe the average casual fan or, someone who's just watching for the first time or doesn't know a whole lot about hockey, but just super valuable plays that, can make differences in games and, breaking up a pass, with your stick that, could lead to the other team scoring or making a really nice outlook pass to a guy breaking down the ice that results in a goal. But maybe, he passes it and then it gets passed 2 or 3 more times. You forget about that. So those are two guys that have played very, very well for the Stars really since the season started, even if they're not necessarily stuffing the stat sheet. Two guys that I don't think the Stars would be on this streak right now without their contributions.
Dane, why don't you tell our listeners where they could find you on social media and where they could find the podcast?
Sure. Yeah, we are Locked On Stars is on all podcasting platforms as well as on YouTube, absolutely free, just like this show, Locked On NHL. And then on Twitter, you can find the show just at Locked On Stars. And then you can find myself at Dane _Lewis.
_. Love it. All right, Dane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad I could be on. Thank you, Gil.
All right. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Directv Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Directv Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.